Once upon a time, in a faraway land teeming with magic and mystery, there lived a humble husband and wife who had long yearned for a child. Their small cottage sat near a splendid garden filled with the most vibrant and unusual plants imaginable. This garden, however, was surrounded by a high stone wall and belonged to a powerful enchantress named Dame Gothel. Her reputation for cruelty and vengeance kept everyone at a distance. One day, as the wife gazed out of her window, her eyes fell upon a bed of Rapunzel greens, their tender leaves gleaming in the sunlight. An intense craving stirred within her, so overwhelming that she could think of nothing else. Day and night, her desire for the greens grew, and she grew pale and sickly. At last she confided in her husband, saying, "If I cannot eat the Rapunzel from that garden, I shall surely waste away and die." Alarmed and desperate to save his beloved, the husband resolved to fulfill her wish. As night fell, he climbed the garden wall, his heart pounding with fear. He quickly plucked a handful of Rapunzel and fled back to their cottage. The wife eagerly devoured the greens, her face lighting up with joy. But her hunger only grew, and the next evening she begged for more. Determined to please her, the husband ventured into the forbidden garden once again. This time, as he reached for the Rapunzel, he froze at the sound of a chilling voice. "How dare you steal from my garden?" thundered Dame Gothel, stepping from the shadows, her eyes blazing with anger. The man fell to his knees, trembling. "Forgive me, noble lady," he pleaded. "My wife is with child and she craves these greens. If I do not bring them to her, she will surely perish." Dame Gothel's expression softened slightly. "If that is true, I will spare you," she said. "But in return you must promise me the child your wife will bear. I will care for the child as if it were my own." Terrified and cornered, the man agreed to her terms. He took the Rapunzel and fled, his heart heavy with the terrible bargain he had made. In due time, the wife gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. As promised, Dame Gothel appeared to claim the child. She named her Rapunzel and raised her with care, though not with love. Rapunzel grew into the most beautiful maiden in the land, her golden hair cascading in waves down her back, shimmering like sunlight woven into silk. Dame Gothel was strict and protective, teaching Rapunzel that the world outside was cruel and unkind. When Rapunzel turned 12, Dame Gothel decided to shield her from the world entirely. She took the girl deep into the forest and locked her in a tall, lonely tower. The tower had no door and no stairs, only a single window high above. To visit her, Dame Gothel would stand below and call, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair that I may climb without a stair." Obediently, Rapunzel would unbraid her long golden hair and lower it out the window. Dame Gothel would use it as a ladder to climb up. The days stretched into years, and Rapunzel's hair grew even longer, so strong that it could bear Dame Gothel's weight with ease. Though isolated, Rapunzel found solace in her surroundings. She befriended the birds that perched on her windowsill and sang to the forest below. Her voice was as clear and pure as a mountain stream, carrying on the wind like a blessing. One day, a prince riding nearby heard her song. Enchanted by the melody, he followed it until he reached the tower. Concealing himself behind the trees, he watched as Dame Gothel called for Rapunzel and climbed up her hair. Intrigued, the prince decided to return the next evening. When night fell, he stood beneath the tower and mimicked Dame Gothel's call. "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair that I may climb without a stair." To his astonishment, the golden hair was lowered and he climbed up. When he reached the window, Rapunzel gasped in fright, for she had never seen a man before. But the prince spoke gently, his words like a soothing balm. He told her how her singing had drawn him to her and how he could not rest until he had found her. His kind words and noble demeanor soon won her trust, and they talked until the stars faded from the sky. Night after night, the prince visited Rapunzel. He brought her gifts of silk, which she began weaving into a ladder. Together they dreamed of her escape and a life beyond the tower's walls. They spoke of sunlight on their faces and laughter that echoed freely. One day Rapunzel, unaware of the danger her words carried, asked Dame Gothel, "Why is it that my dress feels so tight lately?" Dame Gothel's eyes narrowed and understanding dawned upon her. Realizing that Rapunzel was with child, she flew into a terrible rage. "You deceitful child," she screamed. Grabbing a pair of shears, she cut off Rapunzel's golden hair, the strands falling to the floor like threads of spun sunshine. Then she banished Rapunzel to a desolate wasteland, a barren place where only the wind and her own tears would keep her company. That evening, Dame Gothel waited in the tower for the prince. When he called for Rapunzel, she let down the severed braids. The prince climbed up eagerly, only to find himself face to face with the vengeful enchantress. "You will never see Rapunzel again," she spat, her voice like venom. In her fury, she pushed him from the window. The prince fell into a thicket of thorns, which pierced his eyes and left him blind. The prince wandered the forest, blinded and heartbroken. He survived by eating roots and berries, his only solace the memory of Rapunzel's voice. Meanwhile, Rapunzel gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, in the barren wasteland. Though life was harsh, she found strength in her children, singing to them the same songs that had once filled the forest. One fateful day, the prince heard a familiar melody carried on the wind. Weak and weary, he followed the sound, stumbling over roots and stones, until he reached Rapunzel. Overcome with joy, she ran to him, her tears flowing freely. As she embraced him, her tears fell upon his eyes, and miraculously, his sight was restored. The prince gazed at her and their children, his heart overflowing with love. He led them back to his kingdom, where they were welcomed with great celebration. Rapunzel and the prince were finally free to live the life they had dreamed of, filled with love, laughter, and light. As for Dame Gothel, she was never seen or heard from again. Some say she vanished into the shadows of the forest, consumed by her own bitterness. Others believe the earth itself swallowed her up, erasing her presence from the world.